Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the indigenous people on whose lands we are currently gathered. The Osage, Caddo, Ponca, and many other peoples who have been here since time immemorial. I also want to acknowledge the Muskogee Creek, Cherokee, and other Native peoples who were forcibly removed here from their ancestral homelands. Right now, it seems like everywhere I look, there's the indication that collectively, we're in some pretty uncertain and challenging times. There are unending debates over education, healthcare, taxes, civil rights, human rights, environmental rights. And perhaps the most pressing crisis that we're facing today is climate change. Yeah, I said it. Whether we want to believe it or not, the research is there and has been for many years. 97% of scientists agree that this rapid change is a result of human activity. And if we don't change the way we interact with our environment, we risk causing irreversible damage that will predominantly affect our children's quality of life. And yet, in our day-to-day, we don't seem to be treating this like a crisis, even though we're seeing the effects play out in real time. And I've often asked myself, why aren't we treating this like a crisis? Why do we avoid acknowledging it? Well, I think I know why. This shit is daunting. It seems unfathomable. And it's stressful when our lives are already so stressful. We each have a million other things influencing and affecting us that seem more real. Recently, I've been dealing with car trouble, and let me tell you, that has taken up all of my brain power. So I get it. I see these everyday mundane irritants on the faces of the people in my life. On social media, what I notice most are people talking about self-care and how to avoid burnout. Everyone is sharing words of encouragement and tips to get through the day without buckling under the weight of a world that we are more aware of than ever. But what I also see in these be positive, eat green, do yoga, bike more, don't use plastic posts are people who genuinely care about each other and the world around them. These are people who are actively doing what I refer to as building a toolkit. Back in 2015, I was going through some personal times of uncertainty. A family member had passed unexpectedly, and my love life was akin to 1,000 matches catching fire at once. During this time, a group of talented, smart, passionate, and diverse women showed up in my life. A few years older than me, they took me under their collective wing and quickly became the sisters I hadn't realized I was missing. They would hold gatherings where we would share food, perspectives from our different cultures, histories, stories, memories. We would discuss what we were learning about, what our goals were. We would give and receive feedback on our ideas and support each other in the many forms that comes in. From these women, I learned how to really open myself up to opinions that were different from my own. I learned how to actively listen to someone instead of just waiting to speak. And I learned about the power of acknowledgement, both as a giver and a receiver. A year later, and these women had dispersed off to cultivate sustainable living and healing practices elsewhere, and I found myself really longing for that community again. And then one day something clicked. I realized that through their experience, or through their example, these women had gifted me a set of tools. Things like a willingness to be unknowing, how to be vulnerable, how to give myself authority, and how to ask for help or share a burden. I had seen the strength in working together to tackle problems that are larger than ourselves. Utilizing these tools, I realized that I could continue that work of building community where I was. And so I did just that. In 2016, I put out a call on social media in a women's group that I was a part of, and I invited anyone who felt like they needed community to meet at this time and this place and bring snacks. 30 women showed up, none quite sure what they had just come to. And I basically said, all right, here's what we're gonna do. Everyone sit in a circle. I'm going one by one. I want you to say whatever it is you need to say. It can be how you're feeling. It can be what you're working on. It can be what you're proud of. It can be what worries or concerns you. But whatever it is, I want to hear it. And we'll acknowledge it. We'll hold space for it. And we'll support each other as a group. And so it went until everyone had shared. Then we talked about action. What we could do to shape our experience and the world around us. How we could influence both the present and the future. That night I learned so much about these people in my community. Everyone had a unique perspective. Everyone was struggling with something. Everyone had a skill or a talent, and everyone had passion. Through this coming together, being willing to share, and being genuinely open to and curious about one another, we each gained new tools to be added to our toolkits, new ways of thinking, new ways of problem solving. Our differences became our strength, and our similarities created harmony. From these gatherings evolved all kinds of community action, and I am proud to say that I know such a large group of conscientious activists who are each doing their best to better the world for all of us. And so, a toolkit in my mind is full of the tools that we use to understand, navigate, and shape the world around us. More tools equals more ways to play. So, how do we use these toolkits to be better global citizens? Well, first let's talk about how we acquire tools to begin with. To put it simply, we get tools through experience and access. In other words, what we're exposed to. Starting out, our tools come from the environments of our early childhood, but they expand as we expand what we're exposed to. I grew up in a little place called Pawhuska, Oklahoma, a rural town that is home to one of the largest remaining tallgrass prairie ecosystems in the world. It's also the location of the Osage Nation. Our reservation is there, as is one of the locations for our ceremonial dances. From this early childhood environment of small town cultural community, the tools I gained growing up looked like an appreciation for nature through sustainable harvesting practices, an understanding of the importance of herd management and prescribed burning for grasslands, how to express gratitude to food that was once a living entity. And a tool that I would like to add to your toolkits today, a concept called the 7 generations. 7 generations is a way of viewing time as something that connects us directly to past, present, and future simultaneously. It is the recognition that everything we have today and everything we are today is a direct result of our ancestors' actions. And so I look to the 7 generations that came before me, and I thank them for my existence and for all the amazing things that I have. But I also look at how they treated the planet, and I ask myself, did they leave it better for me? I then look to the 7 generations that will come after me, and I consider if I'm living in a way that will ensure all the great things that I enjoy will be passed on to them. Am I adding value to my future descendants' lives? Right now, I'm afraid there won't be much to pass on. I'm afraid there won't be 7 generations to come after me. So, where do we fit in as individuals? How do we build toolkits that help us to be better global citizens? Well, I think by using our current tools and resources to gain new tools that can be applied globally, to get new perspectives, new ways of thinking, by being curious. Now, earlier I mentioned access. I was privileged enough to have a college education where I gained access to more tools and an understanding of how to find them. But not everyone has access to this level of education. Not everyone has access to an education at all. In fact, 72 million children globally, 62 million of which are girls, are unable to receive even a primary education. 759 million adults globally are illiterate. That means that these humans lack the basic tools necessary to better not just their own lives, much less the lives of the people in the world. But what might this world look like if we remove those barriers to education? What innovation and economic growth might we see on a global scale? Living in America, I also have the privilege of being able to access the internet in a fairly unrestricted way. But again, what about people in other places? These are questions worth our curiosity. By acknowledging the privilege of my education, I'm able to use it to the best of my ability. So I read about ideas written from people from other cultures. I cultivate a diverse community, and I listen to people I disagree with. I research the causes for large problems, then I seek solutions, and then I try to figure out where I fit into the equation. We have the ability to use these broadening of our tools to really come to understand our value in the world. My thoughts and actions don't just influence the people immediately around me, they affect people on the other side of the planet. And so do yours. I rely so much on strangers, both living and dead, for my quality of life. In supporting the human family, we support ourselves. But the path to being a good global citizen is neither linear nor clear-cut. It differs for everyone. So I encourage you to look around you to find where tools might be available. Utilize public libraries, art programs, free seminars. Learn from cultural communities that prioritize sustainability. Engage in your community gardens. Explore histories and solutions that worked in the past. Look where you wouldn't normally look, and learn from people who are different than you. You might just be surprised at the kind of tools that you'll find and how you might use them. You might also be surprised at the amount of joy you will find by approaching these serious situations or problems with curiosity. Recently, I learned that the government of El Salvador has commissioned the Earth Law Center to draft an amendment to their constitution that would grant legal rights to nature. This is using the tool of legality in a totally innovative and unexpected way. Conceptual artist Jonathan Keats is currently working on a project that asks the question, what if trees voted? And he's right to ask this question. How might the world change if we allowed other life forms a say in how we use it or interact with it? So keep a playful heart. Be curious. Ask yourself, what if? Expand your considerations, diversify your toolkit, and be creative. We have the ability with a broad range of tools to shape not just how this world will be right now, but how it will be for the future, and what world we're going to collectively gift to our children and their children, and so on. Each one of us are creative, generative beings, capable of influencing ourselves, our friends, our communities, and the world. That's actually very exciting. Humans have a huge capacity to be innovative, caring, and collaborative. But ultimately, this comes down to choice. We each have to choose our own actions. We have to decide how we're going to build our toolkits and how we're going to use those tools to affect the world. I hope that my future descendants will look back with gratitude on the actions that I'm taking today for 7 generations and many more. Thank you.